Within the heart of Umoja, a village celebrated throughout the land for its dense, whispering forests, its rich crimson earth that clung to everything, and its deeply ingrained ancient customs, resided a man named Aquila. He stood as one of the most visibly prosperous cultivators in the settlement. His storehouses consistently brimmed with the bounty of a harvest, his yam granaries perpetually overflowed with plump tubers, and his herds of goats and cattle were remarkably abundant, a testament to his hard work on the land. Yet, while many admired Aquila for his material achievements and outwardly successful life, those who knew him intimately, those privy to the hidden corners of his life, recognized that his material prosperity bore little resemblance to the impoverished state of his inner being. Aquila maintained two marital unions within his household. His primary spouse, Ira, hailed from the distant Quelli region, her origins marked by a subtle difference in manner and speech. She possessed a naturally serene demeanor, an exceptionally industrious spirit, and a profound, quiet sagacity that often went unnoticed by her husband, and she bore him a lovely daughter named Lumina. His second wife, Zola, was a native of his own village, characterized by a cunning, sly, and deeply self-centered disposition, coupled with a notoriously sharp and often cruel tongue. She gave birth to two daughters, Imani and Zuri, and a son named Jabari. Despite both women residing within the same household and sharing the same husband, their treatment diverged significantly, a stark illustration of Aquila's favoritism. Aquila held Zola in remarkably high esteem, frequently extolling her perceived virtues at every available opportunity and ensuring her every fleeting desire was met, be it glittering gilded adornments for her wrists and neck, bolts of fresh, vibrant fabrics for new wrappers, or exquisite culinary delights prepared by the household staff. She invariably received the absolute finest the homestead could offer. Ira, his first wife, however, did not share such fortune or favor. Notwithstanding her benevolent nature, her unwavering patience, and her tireless contributions on the farm and within the home, Aquila regarded her with profound and inexplicable contempt. Perhaps her distinct accent or her foreign tribal origin was the cause of his disdain, or perhaps he simply never truly harbored genuine love for her. Regardless of the reason, he treated her as an unwelcome outsider within her own dwelling, a perpetual stranger in a home she helped build. Ira and young Lumina dwelt in quiet solitude in a modest mud dwelling situated at the rear of the homestead, deliberately distanced from the main residence, where Zola reigned. Ira had cultivated no close friendships in Umoja. The village women, influenced by Zola's whispers or wary of her foreignness, kept their distance. She largely devoted her solitary time to playing the talking drum, a cherished heirloom inherited from her departed father, a man she deeply missed. This drum was far more than a mere musical instrument. It embodied her source of happiness amidst the sorrow. It became her unspoken voice and served as her sole confidant in moments of deep solitude and despair. She lovingly imparted to Lumina the skill of playing its resonant surface, teaching her the rhythms and nuances, and in the peaceful twilight hours, as the sun dipped below the horizon, mother and daughter would commune beneath the venerable baobab tree, singing mournful melodies and rhythmically striking the drum to dispel their shared grief and loneliness. Years elapsed, marked by seasons of rain and sun, and the children matured, blossoming into young adults. Lumina flourished into an exceptionally beautiful young woman, possessing gentle eyes that reflected her kind soul, a pristine heart untouched by bitterness, and diligent hands accustomed to hard work. She inherited her mother's serene temperament, her quiet strength, and her profound sagacity, yet the persistent anguish of feeling uncherished and invisible within her own paternal home persistently shadowed her existence, dulling her natural radiance. Then, during a particularly heavy and unforgiving rainy season, Ira was afflicted with a grave and debilitating illness. Her once robust physique grew alarmingly frail, and her eyes, usually bright and expressive, lost their customary sparkle, dimming with pain. Lumina rushed to her father, her voice laced with desperate urgency. "Father, mother is gravely ill. She requires assistance. We must find a healer." But Aquila merely furrowed his brow, his face hard and unyielding, retorting dismissively, "Let her rest. Perhaps her time on this earth has come." This was the absolute extent of his concern or offers of aid. He offered no help, no comfort, no compassion. Zola, conversely, utterly disregarded her plight, offering not a single herbal remedy from her own stores, not a single drop of cool water, nor a solitary compassionate utterance. She acted as if Ira did not exist. Lumina, still in her tender years but possessing immense inner strength, exerted every ounce of her effort, gathering medicinal plants from the forest, preparing warm nourishment that her mother struggled to swallow, and gently fanning her mother's weakening form during fevered nights. Nevertheless, the insidious malady intensified its grip. One frigid morning, as the persistent rain gently pattered upon their leaking mud roof, Ira drew her final, shallow breath, her frail hand clutching Lumina's tightly. "My daughter," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "never permit this world, its cruelty or its bitterness, to harden your heart. Continue to beat your drum. Let your spirit sing through it." With those final words, her eyes closed forever, and her soul departed. Lumina shrieked and wept inconsolably, her cries tearing through the quiet compound, yet no one approached to console her. She was left alone with her grief. Her mother was interred as if she were a stranger, an unwelcome presence even in death, without proper rites or mourning, merely placed in a shallow grave behind the compound, a disrespectful end for a good woman. Life, at least for everyone else in the main house, proceeded thereafter with chilling indifference. From that fateful day, Lumina became, in essence, an indentured servant within her own father's dwelling. Zola and her daughters, Imani and Zuri, transformed her into their personal domestic helper, burdening her with endless chores. She cooked the household meals, meticulously cleaned the compound, gathered heavy bundles of firewood from the forest, drew countless buckets of water from the distant stream, and performed endless errands from dawn till dusk. She consistently ate last, often receiving only scraps, and at times received no food whatsoever, left to hunger in the midst of plenty. Her father silently observed this cruelty, never offering a supportive hand, a comforting word, or a gesture of protection. To him, Lumina was effectively invisible, a non-entity in his life. Yet, despite the hardship, she never voiced a single complaint, undertaking every arduous chore with quiet dignity and remarkable resilience. Her sole solace and comfort was her mother's beloved talking drum, which she meticulously concealed beneath her sleeping mat, protecting it from Zola's spite. At night, when the household was quiet and darkness enveloped the compound, she would slip out to the backyard, sit beneath the celestial expanse of the star-studded sky, and play softly, intoning melodies filled with longing and sorrow, sounds that only the wind seemed to apprehend and carry away. Her stepsisters frequently taunted her, their words sharp and cruel. "You believe you are extraordinary because of a single, worthless drum?" Zuri would sneer, her voice dripping with mockery. Imani would scoff, her face contorted with contempt. "Play all you desire. That drum will not resurrect your deceased, useless mother." One day, a prosperous farmer named Kwesi, from a nearby settlement known for its fertile fields, arrived at Aquila's homestead. He had heard narratives circulating of a beautiful and diligent maiden named Lumina, a girl whose kindness was as renowned as her quiet suffering. He presented himself bearing generous offerings, mounds of plump yams, large containers brimming with golden palm oil, and 2 robust, healthy goats, a worthy bride price. He bowed courteously before Aquila and declared his purpose. "I have come, esteemed Aquila, to seek the hand of your daughter, Lumina, in matrimony." Aquila appeared momentarily gratified by the offer and was poised to speak when Zola swiftly and rudely interjected, taking control of the situation.
"Lumina Mari?"
"Now," she demanded incredulously. "Who will attend to the household duties if she departs? This girl is not prepared for marriage, nor is she needed elsewhere," she stated sharply, dismissing the prospect entirely. Aquila, ever acquiescing to Zola's will, added, "Indeed, return at another juncture. She is still required here to assist with the chores." Kwesi, his face clouded with disappointment, departed disheartened, his hopes dashed. Lumina, who had been quietly positioned behind the entrance of the dwelling, performing some unseen task, overheard the entire painful exchange, her heart sinking further into despair. That night, she lay upon her hard sleeping mat, clutching her mother's drum tightly to her chest, and wept silent tears until her chest ached with the intensity of her sorrow and frustration. One sweltering afternoon, under the harsh glare of the sun, Zola dispatched Lumina alone to clear a significant section of the Aziza fields, a task usually requiring several workers. The sun beat down relentlessly upon her unprotected head and back, and the terrain was vast and overgrown. Her hands throbbed with the strain of the hoe, and her back burned with the exertion, yet she persisted in her arduous and seemingly endless task, driven by fear of punishment. Abruptly, a woman materialized nearby, seemingly from the shimmering heat haze. She possessed benevolent eyes that held a depth of understanding, a soft, gentle smile, and was clad in a simple white fabric that seemed to radiate peace. "Allow me to assist you, my child," the woman offered, her voice soothing. Lumina recoiled slightly, surprised and wary. "No. Thank you, friend. I can manage it myself." "I insist," the woman rejoined, her tone firm but kind, as she picked up a discarded hoe nearby. To Lumina's astonishment, the woman worked with a speed and efficiency surpassing any human she had ever witnessed. In practically no time at all, the extensive field was immaculately cleared, the weeds gone, the earth ready. "Thank you immensely, friend," Lumina exclaimed, breathless with shock and gratitude. "You are most welcome, my child. I have been observing you for a while now. You are strong, kind, and remarkably forbearing. Never relinquish those qualities, no matter the hardship. But who are you?" "I do not recognize you from the village," Lumina inquired, filled with curiosity. The woman smiled gently, her eyes warm. "I reside within the Ndola woods. I have no kin in this world, but I have been watching over you for a considerable period. You remind me of someone I once cherished deeply." This was not Lumina's initial encounter with her. Their paths had crossed before in similar moments of need, though the encounters were brief and mysterious. Over the ensuing months, the enigmatic woman would manifest during Lumina's most challenging and solitary days, sometimes arriving unexpectedly with a small basket of sustenance, sometimes merely offering a consoling utterance or a much-needed helping hand with her overwhelming chores. She never divulged her name, preserving her mystery, yet her presence unfailingly brought a sense of profound tranquility and hope to Lumina's spirit. One day, Prince Django, the esteemed heir of the prosperous Bari dominion, returned from the metropolitan area where he had pursued his studies for numerous years, gaining knowledge and sophistication. His father, the king, orchestrated a magnificent and lavish festival to commemorate his beloved son's homecoming, a celebration designed to bring joy to the entire kingdom. The event featured melodious music played by skilled musicians, an abundance of food sufficient to feed the entire village, spirited dancing that filled the air with energy, and an open invitation for every villager, rich or poor, to participate in the festivities. Zola, seizing the opportunity, immediately arrayed her daughters, Imani and Zuri, in the most exquisite garments she could procure. Their hair was meticulously braided into graceful, elaborate styles, embellished with vibrant beads that chimed musically with their every movement. The girls appeared luminous, radiant with anticipation, poised and ready for the grand festivities at the royal court of Bari, where they hoped to catch the prince's eye. Before their departure, Zola turned to Lumina with a frigid, unyielding expression and deposited a heavy bundle of firewood at her feet, a cruel reminder of her place. "Cleave this timber before our return," she commanded sternly, her voice sharp with authority, "and heed my words carefully. If I spot you anywhere near the royal court, you will lament the day of your birth. I promise you that." Lumina gazed at her, her heart plummeting with disappointment and hopelessness. She glanced towards her father, Aquila, who stood silently at a corner of the compound, witnessing the exchange, but he merely averted his gaze, treating her as though she were imperceptible, unworthy of his notice or intervention. Tears streamed from Lumina's eyes as she conveyed the heavy axe to the backyard, the weight mirroring the burden in her soul. Her hands quivered with the effort. Each blow upon the resistant would send a jarring jolt of pain through her arms. Her palms blistered and burned, sweat intermingling with streaks of blood. She felt weak and utterly disheartened, yet she persevered, driven by the need to complete the task, until a gentle voice suddenly pierced the silence of her labor. "My child, rest." Lumina looked up, startled, her eyes widening in disbelief. It was the woman once more, the same enigmatic figure who had aided her previously. This time, she carried a woven basket overflowing with provisions and comfort. "Consume something," the woman suggested kindly, placing the basket beside her, offering respite. "I will arrange for someone to assist you with this chore." Lumina regarded her quizzically, confusion clouding her tear-streaked face. "But how do you know where I reside? How did you find me here?" she inquired. The woman smiled softly, a knowing light in her eyes. "I possess all the knowledge I require, my child." Though perplexed by her mysterious nature, Lumina complied, too weary to resist. She sat beneath the shade of a tree, consumed the food swiftly, feeling strength return, and rested for a while, her aching body finding temporary relief. When she finally returned to the stack of firewood, she froze in astonishment. Everything had been split neatly and impeccably, the work completed. She surveyed her surroundings in shock. No one was visible. She was completely alone. Her heart pounded with astonishment and disbelief at the unseen help. Meanwhile, at the royal court of Bari, the king stood before the assembled council of elders and addressed the gathered populace, his voice robust and unequivocal, carrying authority and expectation. "My son, Prince Jengo, is now prepared to select a consort," he declared, the announcement echoing through the court. "In 2 weeks' time, all the maidens throughout the land, from every village and hamlet, shall convene here. They will exhibit their talents before the prince, for he is a discerning aficionado of music and dance. He shall select the one who best captivates him with her skill and spirit." The announcement propagated rapidly throughout the entire Bari dominion, sparking excitement and anticipation. Young maidens eagerly hastened to master novel melodies, intricate dances, and captivating performances, polishing their skills for the grand competition. Hope blossomed in numerous hearts across the land, particularly in Zola's, who saw it as her ultimate opportunity. She promptly engaged a skilled and renowned dancer to tutor her daughters, acquiring for them new, shimmering wrappers, lustrous beads that caught the light, and even coordinated anklets that chimed as they moved. She guaranteed they had the most exemplary and dazzling routines prepared for the upcoming grand competition at the royal court. Lumina, upon hearing the news, felt her heart ache with a profound and agonizing yearning. She had always cherished music deeply, especially the talking drum bequeathed to her by her departed mother, the only physical link she had left to her. Her mother had instructed her patiently on its precise play, teaching her not just the rhythms, but how to infuse her singing with profound emotion, how to synchronize her voice with the drum's pulsing rhythm, making it an extension of her soul. One serene evening, while Zola and her daughters were conveniently absent, pursuing their ambitions, Lumina discreetly entered her mother's old dwelling and retrieved the precious drum, its surface smooth and familiar beneath her touch. She commenced to play and vocalize, her voice gentle yet brimming with fervent emotion, pouring her heart into the music. However, one day, Zola discovered her during one of these precious, private moments. "What absurdity is this?" she demanded, her voice sharp with fury and disbelief. "Are you earnestly practicing to join the other maidens at the royal court? Do you truly believe the prince, the heir to the throne, would even cast a second glance at you, a mere servant girl? Are you not utterly ashamed?" She violently snatched the drum from Lumina's grasp, treating the sacred object with utter disrespect, and slammed it to the hard ground. Then, with a malevolent glint in her eyes, fueled by jealousy and hatred, she seized a container of kerosene and a box of matches and, to Lumina's horror, set the drum ablaze. "No, please. That was my mother's," Lumina cried out, desperately attempting to douse the searing flames with her bare hands. "Please, that drum is all I possess of her memory, all that is left." But Zola shoved her aside with brutal force and watched with grim satisfaction as the drum incinerated to ashes before her eyes. "You are nothing but a disgrace," she spat, her words like venom. "Instead of squandering your time on such foolishness, proceed immediately to the farm and clear the entirety of the weeds. If you fail to complete it before nightfall, I will personally dispatch you to join your deceased, worthless mother in her shallow grave." Lumina trudged to the farm, utterly demoralized and heartbroken, her spirit crushed by the act of cruelty. She gazed at the vast field of weeds, but all she could do was weep, her body shaking with silent sobs. The pain in her chest felt insufferable, a deep wound left by Zola's malice, as if something vital and irreplaceable within her was perishing alongside the drum's ashes. Suddenly, the woman reappeared, her presence a sudden comfort in the overwhelming despair. This time, she held a brand-new talking drum in her hands, its surface polished and ready. Lumina's eyes widened in astonishment, tears still streaming down her face. How did you know?" she whispered, unable to comprehend. "I witnessed what transpired," the woman replied gently, her voice filled with compassion.
"Take this.
Come here daily, away from their eyes, and practice. Conceal the drum here, amongst the trees. No one must see it. The prince has a distinct affection for the talking drum, a rare appreciation for its voice, and you, my child, are the sole individual I know who can play it to his liking, with such soul and skill." Lumina blinked in disbelief, struggling to process the kindness and the mystery.
"Why?
"Why are you assisting me in this way?" she inquired, her voice trembling with emotion. The woman smiled, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder, her touch warm and reassuring. "Because you are diligent and kind, and because you are destined to shine, Lumina. Your spirit is too bright to be hidden away." 2 weeks subsequently, the day of the exhibition finally dawned, a day of high anticipation throughout the Bari Dominion. Zola attired her daughters regally. Their ensembles shimmered with expensive fabrics and adornments, their complexions radiated health and beauty, and their coiffures were adorned with fresh, lustrous beads that caught the morning sun. Meanwhile, she presented Lumina with a sizable bowl overflowing with hard palm nuts. "Crack all of these before I return from the court," she commanded, her tone final, "and do not even contemplate setting foot anywhere near the royal court of Bari. Do you understand?" Lumina attempted to entreat, her voice small but filled with a desperate plea. "Please, I wish to go as well. I have something to offer, a talent. Just one opportunity." Before she could conclude her heartfelt request, her stepsisters erupted in cruel, mocking laughter, finding her aspirations utterly ridiculous. "What talent do you possess? Is it this tattered garment you wear that you intend to showcase to the prince?" Zuri scoffed, pointing at Lumina's worn clothes. Imani added with a sneer, her voice dripping with contempt, "Perhaps she plans to contend for Madwoman of the Year. Just look at her, observe her hair and her ragged appearance." Zola approached Lumina, her patience gone, seized her by the ear with painful force, and stated coldly, "I desire not to see your shadow in the royal court. The prince is not seeking a girl such as yourself, dirty and unwed. Remain here and attend to your menial tasks where you belong." With that, she and her daughters departed in a flurry of splendor and self-importance, proceeding towards the royal court, their triumphant laughter diminishing into the distance, leaving Lumina alone with her despair. Lumina sank to the ground, feeling numb with disappointment and rejection. Then her thoughts began to race, a spark of defiance igniting within her. "I must go. I simply must," she resolved, determination hardening her spirit. Suddenly, as if by enchantment or design, the woman appeared once more, her presence a welcome miracle. But this time, She bore more than just a drum. She carried a basket laden with exquisite garments, perfumed oil, beads, soap, and a finely crafted wooden comb. "Proceed and bathe," the woman instructed kindly, gesturing towards a nearby stream. "I will await your return here." Lumina, needing no further encouragement, complied. When she returned, cleansed and revitalized, feeling renewed, the woman styled her hair into intricate, beautiful braids, massaged sweet-scented oil onto her skin, making it glow, and dressed her in a vibrant wrapper that seemed to shimmer with inner light. She adorned Lumina's wrists and ankles with delicate beads and presented her with a talking drum, its voice waiting to be unleashed. "Why are you performing all this for me?" Lumina inquired again, her voice brimming with astonishment and profound gratitude. The woman gently clasped her hand, her touch warm and reassuring, and gazed into her eyes, a deep, knowing love reflected there. "You will comprehend soon enough, my child. Now go, let your brilliance illuminate the court." Lumina peered into the small, polished mirror the woman offered. She gasped. She scarcely recognized herself, transformed from a drudge into a vision of grace. She appeared like a princess, radiant and beautiful. She turned and embraced the woman tightly, tears of gratitude welling in her eyes. Thank you," she murmured into her shoulder. "Go now," the woman whispered softly, returning the embrace. "I shall be observing your performance at the royal court, watching over you." Maiden after maiden danced and sang, displaying their carefully rehearsed talents. Prince Django sat quietly on the dais, his expression impassive, clearly unimpressed by the conventional performances. Then Lumina arrived, entering the court, her talking drum held ready in her hands. The crowd gasped, astonished by her luminous appearance. She was unrecognizable as the village outcast. Who was this exquisite young woman, possessing such grace and beauty? After all the other maidens had performed, showcasing their skills, Lumina stepped forward into the center of the court. She played the talking drum with remarkable grace and precision, drawing forth its resonant voice, and then sang in her late mother's distinct dialect, a language of love and sorrow. The sound reverberated across the royal court walls like an ancestral summons, a call from the very heart of the land. The prince, who had not smiled all day, his face a mask of polite indifference, leaned forward, captivated by the raw emotion and unique sound, and smiled for the first time. He produced his flute and joined her spontaneously in a harmonious musical rendition, their instruments and voices weaving together in a captivating duet. When their joint performance concluded, the royal court fell silent for a breathless moment, then a wave of thunderous applause erupted. The people clapped, cheered, and rose to their feet in spontaneous admiration, their hearts moved by the performance. The prince turned to his father, the king, and whispered something into his ear, his eyes fixed on Lumina. The Enkay king ascended from his throne, his face beaming with pleasure, and raised his staff, commanding attention. "My people," he proclaimed, his voice ringing with authority and joy, "the prince has made his selection. He chooses the maiden with a talking drum. He chooses Lumina as his consort, his future queen." Cheers permeated the air. Some wept with elation. Others simply stared in awe at the unexpected turn of events. But from the rear of the assembled crowd, a voice rang out, full of fury and disbelief, shattering the moment. "She is a thief!" Zola shrieked, standing abruptly, her face contorted with rage and jealousy. "She pilfered that drum and those garments. She is a pauper. She cannot possibly afford them." A wave of shock rippled through the throng, all eyes fixated on Lumina, waiting for her response. The Enkay raised his hand for silence and turned to the young woman, his countenance serious. "Lumina," he stated firmly, "is this accusation true?" Before she could utter a single word in her defense, a mysterious woman stepped forth from amidst the crowd, her presence commanding attention. She wore a simple wrapper, yet her voice conveyed immense strength and quiet dignity. "It is a falsehood," she stated calmly, addressing the king and the assembly. "I bestowed upon her those garments. I gifted her the drum. Her stepmother has subjected her to abominable ill-treatment since childhood. She physically abused her, deprived her of food, and even maliciously destroyed the last memento she possessed of her departed mother. Murmurs of agreement erupted from the crowd, confirming the woman's words. Several women from Umoja rose, stepping forward to support the claim. "She speaks the truth, my king," one affirmed. "We have witnessed it with our own eyes, though we were powerless to stop it." "We attempted to intercede with Zola on Lumina's behalf," another added, her voice brave, "but she refused to listen. She treated Lumina as a mere chattel, a slave in her own home." The Igwe slowly turned to Zola, his countenance filled with profound disappointment and stern judgment. "Zola," he pronounced, his voice resonating with authority, "for falsely accusing a member of the royal court before the king and for mistreating your stepdaughter, who is now our future queen, you shall serve here in the royal court for a period of 6 months. You will acquire humility and benevolence through service, learning the value of respect and kindness." The crowd erupted in cheers of approval at the just sentence. The prince stood and proudly took Lumina's hand, his face alight with love and pride. Imani and Zuri, Zola's daughters, could not meet Lumina's gaze, their faces filled with shame and embarrassment. Akila, Lumina's father, bowed his head in deep shame, finally understanding the extent of his failure and the grace of his daughter. Later that evening, Lumina discovered the enigmatic woman behind the royal court of Bari, near a secluded area, standing beneath the moonlight. "Thank you," Lumina uttered softly, tears of gratitude and wonderment welling in her eyes. "I know not how to reciprocate your immense kindness. You have changed my life." The woman gently held her hand and gazed into her eyes, a look of deep, maternal love in her expression. "Do not cry, my child," she stated, her voice tender, "but I must impart something significant to you, a truth you need to know." Lumina nodded slowly, her heart pounding with anticipation. "I am your mother," the woman whispered, the words hanging in the air between them. "But my mother is deceased," Lumina responded, her face etched with shock and disbelief, unable to reconcile the words with reality. "Yes," her mother's spirit confirmed softly, "I passed away in the physical world. But my spirit could not find repose or peace while you endured such suffering and hardship. But now I can depart in peace, knowing you are in a secure place, cherished and protected." Tears freely streamed down Lumina's face, understanding dawning in her heart. She opened her mouth to speak, to ask questions, to express her love, but no words emerged. She covered her mouth with her hand, overwhelmed by profound emotion and the miracle before her. Her mother smiled softly, a smile filled with love and release, waved a final, tender farewell, and gradually dissolved into the twilight breeze, like a fading dream, her form becoming one with the air. 2 days later, the royal court of Bari resonated once more, this time with music, joy, and celebration. The wedding ceremony of Prince Django and Lumina was magnificent and vibrant, a joyous occasion for the entire dominion. Lumina was adorned in the finest coral beads, a flowing gown of shimmering silk, and a regal headpiece that sparkled like the constellations in the night sky. She danced, she sang, and she smiled throughout the day, her happiness infectious, radiating outwards to everyone present. Akila, now humbled and filled with deep remorse for his past failures, approached her cautiously. He knelt at her feet, his voice thick with emotion, and implored forgiveness for his neglect and cruelty. Lumina, with her characteristic grace and benevolent heart, pardoned him, though the deep anguish of the past still lingered within her heart, a scar that would take time to heal. Her benevolence touched many that day, a testament to her true character. As she sat beside Prince Django, her new husband, Lumina gazed up at the clear blue sky, feeling her mother's presence in the gentle breeze, and softly whispered, "Thank you, Mama. Your love brought me here." From that day forward, the talking drum she played no longer conveyed sorrow and loneliness. It vibrated with joy, pride, and unwavering hope, its voice transformed. And in the villages across the land, Folk ballads were sung about the courageous maiden who played the drum, married a prince, and was so profoundly cherished and watched over by a mother that not even the finality of death could sever their unbreakable spiritual bond. The royal court of Bari continued to effervesce with delight from the magnificent wedding of Prince Django and Lumina for many days. The rhythmic drumming had mellowed into a softer, more continuous beat, but the celebratory spirit still permeated the air like the sweet fragrance of fresh blossoms after a spring rain. Dancers congregated in repose, their energy spent but their hearts full. Musicians played gentle melodies in the background, creating an atmosphere of contentment, and the people of Umoja Kingdom remained in awe of the miracle they had witnessed. The impoverished, outcast maiden who had now ascended to become the crown prince's bride. Yet, while the entire village rejoiced in the good fortune, one compound sat in profound silence, cold and fractured by bitterness. Zola, Lumina's stepmother, returned from the royal court with her two daughters, Imani and Zuri, resembling a woman stripped bare of everything: her pride, her status, her hope. Her head was bowed low in shame, her wrapper trailed across the dusty path as she walked, and her eyes conveyed both deep shame and utter disbelief at the turn of events. They had attended the wedding as mere spectators, compelled to witness another inhabit the life of privilege and status they believed was rightfully theirs. Upon their arrival home, no one spoke initially. They simply sat upon the worn wooden bench in the corridor, overwhelmed and silenced by the weight of the recent events and their own downfall. Then, abruptly, Zola stood, her face contorted with simmering fury and resentment. "This is incomprehensible," she shrieked, her voice trembling with frustrated rage. "My own stepdaughter is now the crown prince's wife. What about the two of you? Why could neither of you be chosen? You were groomed for this." Zuri slowly looked up, her voice quiet but resolute, a newfound wisdom in her eyes. "Mama," she began softly, "we should be thankful that someone from our family, from this compound, was selected. So many maidens competed for the prince's hand, yet it was Lumina who was favored by fate and the spirits. The spirits still showed us mercy through her elevation." But before she could finish, Imani angrily interjected, her voice sharp with indignation. "No, I cannot accept that. Why should it be Lumina of all people, that servant girl? And that peculiar woman who appeared, claiming she helped her? Who is she? I have never seen her in this village before, never." "Indeed," Zola concurred, her brows furrowed with suspicion and malice. "I have never encountered that woman in this community either. There is something amiss about her. She simply materialized from nowhere, like a ghost." As their bitter conversation persisted, a loud, authoritative rap suddenly echoed from the sturdy wooden gate of the compound. The sound cleaved through the tense atmosphere like a sharp blade, startling them all. They all froze, their eyes wide with apprehension. Zola slowly approached the gate and unlatched it, her heart pounding. Standing there was one of the king's royal guards, tall, imposing, and solemn in his duty. "Good afternoon, Madame Zola," the guard stated with a tone of finality and authority. "By royal decree of the king, you are to report to the royal court of Bari immediately. Your service commences today, as part of the punishment previously pronounced by the king himself." Zola's face fell, the last vestige of her arrogance crumbling. She remained silent, but her heart raced with fear and humiliation. Her daughters stood behind her, their faces filled with apprehension and bewilderment, unsure of what their mother's fate would be. Without a word, Zola secured her wrapper tightly around her waist, adjusted her headscarf out of habit, and began her somber walk towards the royal court. Her footsteps were heavy, each press into the crimson earth a mark of shame and public disgrace. When Zola arrived at the royal court, the atmosphere was chillingly indifferent, filled with subtle disapproval. Some workers averted their gaze, avoiding her eyes. Others stared in silence, a silent judgment. A few who recalled her past cruelty towards Lumina regarded her with quiet gratification, seeing justice served. She was escorted to the courtyard where the palace attendants assembled each morning for directives and assignments. Standing before them was Mama Nala, the head attendant, an elder woman with stern eyes and an uncompromising demeanor known throughout the court. Mama Nala stepped forward and handed Zola a heavy wooden bucket and a coarse broom, the tools of a servant. "You will commence by drawing water from the well, sweeping this entire vast courtyard, and laundering the royal guards' uniforms every morning," she stated in a firm, unyielding tone, leaving no room for argument. "You are to speak only when absolutely necessary and must demonstrate respect to every single royal court worker, regardless of their station or task. Should you utter anything against the royal family, Prince Django, or Princess Lumina, your punishment will be extended indefinitely." Zola's eyes widened in disbelief and outrage.
I.
"Wash guards' garments and sweep this vast place? Me, Zola?" "Yes," Mama Nala replied without flinching, her expression stern. "And that is merely today's assignment. You should anticipate much more arduous tasks as the days unfold." Zola wished desperately to protest, to argue, to scream, but she could discern from Mama Nala's posture and expression that she would not yield. So, with clenched teeth and a heavy, resentful heart, she took the broom and bucket and commenced her humiliating task, the beginning of her penance. As the days unfolded, life within the royal court grew increasingly arduous and isolating for her. The other attendants showed her no kindness or camaraderie. Some whispered behind her back, spreading gossip. Others openly mocked her misfortune. "Observe how the mighty has fallen," one of them loudly murmured one day, ensuring Zola could hear, from madam of her own compound to a common maid in the king's court. On another occasion, as she knelt beside the royal court fountain, washing clothes with aching hands, a young attendant intentionally poured a bucket of soapy water near her, splashing it directly over her face and wrapper, a deliberate act of cruelty. Laughter ensued from the surrounding workers, but Zola said nothing aloud, though inwardly, her pride seared with unbearable humiliation. The indignity was intolerable. She yearned to scream in frustration and rage, but she knew better than to defy the king's decree. One afternoon, as Lumina, now Princess Lumina, strolled through the royal court corridor, her presence radiating grace, she noticed Zola laboring to carry a heavy bucket of water, her back bent with strain. She paused, gazing for a moment at the woman who had caused her so much pain. So much had transformed in such a short time. This was the woman who had derided her, beaten her, starved her, and attempted to ruin her very existence, but now she appeared a mere shadow of her former formidable self, broken and defeated. Later that evening, Lumina sat in her royal chamber, her heart heavy not with vengeance, but with a quiet sorrow for the cycle of pain. She recalled a profound saying her late mother often uttered: "Bitterness is akin to poison. When you harbor it within your heart, you harm yourself far more than anyone else." She turned to her husband, Prince Django, her voice soft but resolute. "My love," she said gently, "I need to discuss something important with you, something weighing on my spirit." Prince Django looked up from the scroll he was reading, his eyes full of affection. "What is it, my queen?" "Your wish is my command." "Zola," Lumina stated simply. "I wish for her punishment to cease. I acknowledge her actions towards me were profoundly wrong, and she caused me great suffering, but I do not wish to return evil for evil. It will not bring me peace." Django raised a brow, surprised by her compassion. "You are too benevolent, Lumina, after all she subjected you to for so many years." Lumina nodded slowly, a sad smile touching her lips. "Yes, but harming her further will not heal the wounds she inflicted upon me. Please speak to your father, the king. Let her return to her home and family." Django was silent for a moment, contemplating her request. Then he smiled gently, recognizing the depth of her forgiveness. "Your heart is indeed exquisite, Lumina. I will speak to the king tomorrow morning." The next morning, the king summoned Zola to the throne room, ending her arduous service unexpectedly early. She entered nervously, her head bowed low, bowing profoundly before the Igwe, unsure of her fate. The king cleared his throat, his voice firm but without harshness. "You have served your punishment, Zola," he announced. "My son, Prince Django, and his wife, Princess Lumina, have requested your return to your home and compound." Zola knelt quickly, relief washing over her. "Thank you, my king. Thank you," she said, keeping her head bowed, careful not to show the bitterness still swirling within her. But even as she spoke, there was no genuine gratitude in her heart, only a festering resentment for the humiliation she had endured. She was not contrite for her actions, only infuriated that she had been caught, judged, and publicly shamed. She departed the royal court that day without uttering a single word to anyone, her heart hardening further. Upon reaching home, she observed Aquila sitting quietly beneath the ancient baobab tree in their compound, seemingly at peace. Her face was contorted with anger and resentment as she approached him, ready to unleash her fury. "You will not believe what that malevolent daughter of yours did to me," she snapped, her voice sharp and accusatory. "She instructed her fellow attendants to treat me with disrespect, assigning me the most arduous and humiliating tasks in the royal court. Me, Zola, can you imagine the indignity I suffered at her hands? She must atone for all the humiliation and pain I endured there." Aquila looked up at her, his expression calm, but his voice imbued with a quiet disappointment that cut through her anger. "Zola," he said quietly, shaking his head, "have you learned nothing at all from this experience? You should be thankful that you did not serve your full sentence. The king stipulated 3 months, but you only remained for 1 week. 1 week, and you are already complaining bitterly. If you ask me," he paused, then continued with a proud, almost boastful smile, "I believe it was Lumina herself who interceded on your behalf, asking the king for mercy. That girl possesses a good heart, a heart far better than yours, it seems. Instead of harboring bitterness and resentment, why not seek ways to mend your relationship with her, with your stepdaughter? Because, let me tell you something." He paused again, then continued with a proud smile that infuriated Zola. "I will not permit anyone, not even you, to come between me and my daughter, the future queen of this kingdom. People are already beginning to respect us, to speak our names with reverence because of her. Can you believe it? Me, Aquila, the father of the future queen." He chuckled softly to himself, seemingly oblivious to Zola's rage, and gazed up at the sky, lost in his newfound pride. "I never envisioned this could transpire in my lifetime, but observe how fate, or perhaps the spirits, reverse things. My heart is filled with immense joy and pride because of her." Zola stood there stunned into silence, unable to comprehend what she was hearing. Her husband, the very man who once vehemently detested Lumina's mother and treated Lumina herself with utter disdain, was now lauding the girl they both once scorned and neglected. "So, she is your precious daughter now?" she asked bitterly, her voice laced with sarcasm and disbelief. "When did that miraculous transformation occur? The same girl you used to mock because of her mother, the same girl you treated as worthless, less than a servant. That was in the past, Zola." Aquila interjected dismissively, waving a hand as if to dismiss years of cruelty. "Everything changed the day I heard her sing at the royal court, the day I saw her stand tall and proud. I never realized she possessed such talent, such grace. She is truly exceptional, a gift." Zola sighed deeply, a sound of pure frustration and resentment, and walked into the house without uttering another word, unable to process his sudden, self-serving metamorphosis. This was not the husband she once knew. His change was utterly unexpected and deeply unsettling to her plans. The following day, Zola sat with her daughters, Imani and Zuri, on the veranda, the tension between them palpable. She complained bitterly about her treatment during her short punishment at the royal court of Bari, unable to let go of her resentment. "I toiled like a common servant," she lamented, exaggerating her suffering, "washing, scrubbing, sweeping for hours. My hands are still aching and raw. That girl, Lumina, she truly disgraced me before everyone." Imani shook her head, her anger echoing her mother's. "Do not fret, Mama. She will still pay for this, eventually. Let her continue to act like a queen. Pride precedes a fall, they say." But Zuri, the younger daughter, who had been quietly listening to her mother's bitter complaints, softly stated, her voice hesitant but sincere, "But Mama, perhaps it is time we apologize to Lumina. Truly apologize. The way we treated her was utterly wrong. She never did anything to merit the terrible things we did to her, the pain we caused." "Apologize to whom, for what?" Imani interrupted angrily, her face hardening. "Do not heed her, Mama. Do not listen to her foolish talk." "Zuri!" Zola shouted, her voice sharp with fury. "Who sent you to speak such nonsense? What foolishness are you uttering? I will never bow to that girl. Never apologize for anything." Later that same day, Zuri, feeling overwhelmed by guilt and shame, quietly departed the house without telling anyone and went to the royal court of Bari, seeking Lumina. When she saw Lumina, looking radiant and serene, she knelt down before her and began to weep, remorse pouring out of her. "Please forgive me, Lumina," she articulated through her tears, her voice choked with emotion, "for everything, for how I treated you, for how we all treated you so cruelly. I deeply regret it, every moment of it." Lumina looked at her with surprise, then smiled warmly, her heart touched by Zuri's sincerity. She could see that Zuri truly meant every word, that her remorse was genuine. "Thank you, Zuri," she said softly, reaching down and lifting her up, embracing her. "You do not comprehend how much this signifies to me, how much your words mean. I have been praying for so long that one day we would all become a family again, united in love. Please visit me often here at the court. I have missed you, my sister." From that day forward, Zuri and her father, Akila, began to visit Lumina regularly at the royal court. Slowly, tentatively, the bond between them began to mend, healing the deep fractures that had existed for so long. But Zola and Imani remained bitter and consumed by pride, unable or unwilling to release their resentment. A few weeks later, Lumina made a heartfelt petition to the prince, seeking his help with a matter close to her heart. "My mother departed this world many years ago," she said, tears welling in her eyes as she spoke of her. "She was interred as if she were insignificant, forgotten. I wish now to grant her the kind of burial she truly deserves, a ceremony worthy of her spirit. Please assist me in honoring her memory." Prince Django held her hand gently, his eyes filled with understanding and love. "Say no more, my queen. We shall do it. Your mother will be honored as she should have been." A magnificent and grand burial ceremony was orchestrated by the royal court. The entire Bari dominion emerged to honor the departed woman, Ira, a woman few had known but whose daughter was now their princess. Royal drummers beat their instruments, their rhythms echoing across the land. Dancers filled the royal courtyard with graceful movements, and a statue was erected in her memory, a permanent tribute to her life. As the drums reverberated across the land, carrying the sounds of honor and remembrance, Lumina stood quietly, tears streaming down her cheeks, a mix of sorrow and profound gratitude. "Thank you, Mama," she whispered, her voice carried on the wind. "Now you can finally rest in peace." But somewhere in the large crowd, hidden from view, Zola observed everything with burning jealousy and resentment, unable to feel anything but anger. Her hands clenched into tight fists at her sides. "How can she possess everything?" she muttered to herself later that night, consumed by her bitterness. "Even in death, her mother is now more revered and honored than I ever will be." One morning, the royal court of Bari buzzed with exhilarating excitement. Lumina announced that she was expecting a child, the heir to the throne. The joyous news spread like wildfire throughout the kingdom. The entire Bari dominion rejoiced, their hearts filled with hope for the future. Drums were played from every corner of the royal court. The prince hosted a lavish feast filled with food and drink. The people sang hymns of praise and offered blessings. But deep within Zola's heart, a new, dangerous fire of hatred and malice began to ignite, hotter and more destructive than before. "If she bears a son," she whispered conspiratorially to Imani, her eyes gleaming with calculation, "her position in this royal court will be permanent, unchallengeable. We cannot allow that. So, What shall we do, Mama? Imani asked, still partially under her mother's influence. We will feign apology, a complete change of heart, Zola said, her eyes sharp and malevolent, a cruel smile playing on her lips. We will gain her trust, make her believe we have changed. Then, when the opportune moment arises, when she is most vulnerable, we will ensure she does not deliver that baby, or that the baby does not survive. What they did not know was that Zuri was standing just outside the window and had overheard every single, chilling word of their treacherous plan. She was frozen in shock and horror, her heart beating rapidly with fear and dread. Tears filled her eyes as she stepped forward, unable to remain silent. "Stop it, Mama. Stop it, Imani," she cried, her voice filled with anguish and desperation. "Have you not inflicted enough pain and suffering already? Lumina is a child of destiny, favored by the spirits. Everything you subjected her to, starving her, beating her, lying against her, destroying her things, the spirits still elevated her above you. Can you not perceive it? You cannot destroy her or what is meant for her. Please, Mama, change before it is too late, before you destroy yourselves. Leave this house if you have joined her side." Zola shouted, her face contorted with rage, seeing her daughter as a traitor. "Yes," Imani added, her voice sharp, reverting to her old ways under her mother's influence. "Go and reside with your precious queen sister. Let us see if she will treat you as anything more than a maid, a burden." With tears streaming down her face, her heart shattered by her family's wickedness, Zuri fled from the house, running towards the safety of the royal court, fearing what her mother and sister might do next. A few days later, just as Zuri had feared, Zola and Imani went to the royal court of Bari, humbly dressed and feigning deep remorse, executing their plan. They knelt before Lumina, who was resting in her chambers, offering a false show of contrition. "Please forgive me, Lumina," Zola said, forcing tears down her cheeks, a performance crafted with cruel intention. "I should have treated you like my own daughter, with love and kindness. I am deeply sorry for all the pain I caused you." Imani nodded and joined in the act, her voice falsely humble. "We were wrong. Please forgive us, dear sister." Lumina's heart was overwhelmed with unexpected joy and hope. She had long prayed for this moment, the day peace would return to her fractured family, the day they might reconcile. "I have forgiven you," she said with a bright, genuine smile, her heart open and vulnerable. "When I give birth, I desire you to come and perform the naming ceremony for my child, as is our custom." From that day, Zola and Imani became frequent visitors at the royal court, welcomed into Lumina's life. They smiled, they laughed, they behaved outwardly as if everything was amicable and forgiven. But when Zuri noticed their sudden closeness to Lumina, her heart was troubled, filled with apprehension. She knew their intentions were perilous, born of malice, but she did not know how to caution her sister without appearing to overreact or create new conflict. She only hoped desperately that the truth would somehow come to light before it was tragically too late. Months passed, marked by the growth of Lumina's belly and the apparent mending of relationships. Lumina welcomed Zola and Imani into her life with an open heart, choosing love and forgiveness over bitterness. She treated them with unfailing kindness, never once mentioning the pain they had inflicted upon her throughout her childhood. She offered them comfortable seating in her chambers, shared her meals with them, and even purchased them beautiful wrappers from the royal court market, showering them with generosity. Imani, who had entered the royal court with hatred and a cruel plan in her heart, began to undergo a slow, quiet transformation. She witnessed firsthand how pure Lumina's heart was, how gentle, how genuinely forgiving, and it profoundly moved her, chipping away at her cynicism. "How can someone we treated like refuse still be this kind to us?" she questioned herself one night, wrestling with her conscience. Day by day, the weight of guilt dissolved the hardness in her heart, replaced by a growing respect and even affection for her stepmother. She began to genuinely cherish Lumina, not because of the crown on her head or her royal status, but because of the noble and truly good person she had become despite her suffering. She ceased participating in her mother's malevolent thoughts and wicked schemes, finding them increasingly repulsive. One day, she finally asserted herself, drawing a line in the sand. "Mama," she declared one evening, her voice firm and clear, "I will no longer partake in your hatred or your plans. If you attempt to harm Lumina again, in any way, I will be the one to report you to the king. I mean it." Zola was stunned by her daughter's defiance, her own flesh and blood turning against her. She offered a false, brittle smile and replied, "I have changed, Imani. I am now solely interested in peace and reconciliation." But deep inside, her bitterness and resentment continued to fester like unseen weeds, poisoning her spirit. She was merely awaiting the opportune moment to strike, her cruel plans still simmering. Months later, the joyful news arrived, echoing through the kingdom. Lumina gave birth to a robust, healthy baby boy, the future heir. The entire Bari dominion erupted in jubilation and celebration. People danced in the streets for days. Drums played from dawn till dusk. Gifts poured into the royal court from every village and hamlet, offerings of goodwill and blessing. The prince held his son in his arms with immense pride and named him Chisholm, a name meaning, "God is with me," a fitting name for a child born under such circumstances. Akila's compound was filled with well wishes from villagers who now saw him in a new light. Even the elders who once derided Lumina and her mother now knelt to bless her child, recognizing the blessing she represented. It was a day of widespread celebration. Everyone rejoiced, everyone, save for Zola, whose heart was a dark, isolated place. That night, while others were still singing and drinking palm wine in joyous celebration, she sat alone in a corner of her room, her heart seething with fury and consuming jealousy. "So, she is now the mother of the next king?" she muttered bitterly to herself, the thought unbearable. "She has permanently secured her place in that royal court. I cannot allow this to persist. I will not be defeated." She stood up, her mind resolute, a terrible decision taking root. "Tomorrow," she thought with chilling clarity, "I go for the naming ceremony, and she will consume her final meal on this earth." The next morning, Zola awoke early, driven by her malicious purpose. She fetched fresh yams from the backyard, harvesting the fruit of the earth with wicked intent, and began preparing yam porridge, Lumina's favorite dish, a meal meant to be shared in celebration. As she stirred the pot over the fire, her hand steady despite the dark purpose, she retrieved a small brown calabash carefully hidden beneath her bed. Inside was a powdered toxin derived from dried herbs, a potent poison known to induce a slow, agonizing demise, leaving no trace. She sprinkled it carefully and deliberately into the simmering pot, stirred it thoroughly, and tasted a minuscule amount with the tip of her tongue, confirming its presence. "Sweet," she murmured to herself, a grim smile on her face, "sweet and deadly, just as planned." Once finished with her wicked concoction, she covered the food and proceeded to the washroom to bathe and dress for the naming ceremony, anticipating her dark victory. She did not anticipate anyone else being home. Everyone, she assumed, had gone ahead to the royal court to celebrate with the royal family, leaving the compound empty. But fate harbored its own design, a cruel twist of irony. Imani returned home unexpectedly. She had forgotten her headscarf, a small oversight with monumental consequences, and had quickly come back to retrieve it before proceeding to the celebration. But as she entered the compound, the sweet, inviting aroma of yam porridge assailed her nostrils, reminding her of a comfort she had denied herself. She paused, drawn by the familiar scent. "Oh, this scent is divine," she exclaimed to herself. "Mama must have cooked for Lumina, her favorite." Without hesitation, driven by hunger and affection for her stepmother, she walked into the kitchen, lifted the pot lid, and saw the steaming porridge within. "Yam porridge, my favorite," she cried out, forgetting all caution. Without thinking, she scooped a large, generous portion onto a plate and ate voraciously, savoring the taste. She licked her fingers, enjoying the last remnants, and smiled contentedly as she swallowed the final bite. Zola emerged from the washroom, tying her wrapper around her waist and humming a tune of false innocence, ready to depart. The smile on her face froze in horror when she saw the empty plate in Imani's hand, the remains of her poisoned offering. She dropped her sponge onto the floor and shrieked, a sound of pure terror. "Imani, what have you just done?" Imani smiled, unaware of the impending doom. "I just sampled the porridge you are taking to Lumina, Mama. That food is delicious, truly." Zola staggered backward, her eyes widening in horror and disbelief, her wicked plan turned back upon itself.
No, no, no.
"Imani, that food was poisoned," she screamed, her voice filled with frantic despair. "It was not intended for you. It was meant for Lumina. My plan was for Lumina." Imani dropped the plate. It shattered on the floor. Her hands began to tremble violently. Her face paled. "What, Mama? You poisoned the food? You were going to kill Lumina?" But it was already too late. The poison was swift and merciless. Sweat beaded on her forehead. Her breathing grew shallow and ragged. She collapsed to her knees, clutching her stomach in agony, her eyes wide with pain and betrayal. Zola rushed out of the house, screaming like a madwoman, tearing at her hair in frantic despair as she entered the thicket, desperately searching for the youth leaf, a wild plant reputed to reverse certain poisons, a futile hope. But by the time she returned, her face scratched and her clothes torn, Imani lay lifeless on the kitchen floor, cold and still, her eyes wide open in shock and pain. Zola let out a wail that pierced the sky, a sound of unbearable grief and regret. "I did not intend to kill my daughter. It was meant for Lumina, not my own child, not my precious Imani." News of the tragic death and the attempted poisoning spread rapidly throughout the village and to the royal court. The villagers gathered around the house, some weeping for Imani's wasted life, others shaking their heads in disbelief at Zola's wickedness. When word reached the royal court of Bari, the Igwe, filled with righteous anger and sorrow for Lumina's narrowly averted tragedy, summoned the elders and the royal guards. "She attempted to murder my son's wife, the mother of the future king," he stated, his voice firm and resolute. "Her own wickedness has befallen her household, consuming her own child." The elders nodded solemnly, their faces grim. "This kind of heart is perilous, a danger to the community. Let her be banished from the village. She is no longer one of us. Her heart is too dark to remain." That same evening, Zola was marched through the village, a figure of shame and despair. She wore tattered clothes. Her hair was disheveled and wild. She cried, begged, and screamed for forgiveness. "Forgive me. It was a mistake. I did not intend to kill her. Please have mercy." But no one pitied her. Even the women who used to gossip with her and stand by her side turned their backs, unable to associate with such evil. She was led beyond the village boundary and sent into the Ndola woods alone, disgraced, broken, and left to face the consequences of her own actions. Zuri wept bitterly, mourning the loss of her sister and the destruction of her family. She sat beside Imani's grave, holding a single white flower, a symbol of lost innocence. "If only Mama had truly changed," she whispered through her tears. "If only she had let go of her hatred." Lumina wept too, not because of Zola, whose fate was a consequence of her own choices, but because of the agony of a family ravaged by hatred, pride, and consuming jealousy. She held baby Chisholm close to her chest, her heart filled with a mother's love and a profound sense of loss for what might have been, and whispered a prayer for her son's future. "May my son grow up in a world where love triumphs over bitterness, where bitterness is interred forever, where families can heal and forgiveness is possible." The moral of this narrative is straightforward, a lesson as old as the crimson earth itself. Hatred is a slow-acting venom. It consumes the one who harbors it, destroying them from within. Learn to forgive. Release the corrosive grip of jealousy and resentment. When we opt for love, compassion, and forgiveness over vengeance and bitterness, we interrupt the devastating cycle of suffering and open the portal to true healing, restoration, and peace, not just for ourselves, but for those around us.